Today we have a new Q&A on the official forums for Elite Dangerous Odyssey. This time the focus is on weapons. Now up front I'm going to say before we go any further into this video that the pickings are fairly slim on this Q&A. There's not a huge vast amount of details here, and certainly as usual no images or anything like that, but it does give us some indication on what to expect from combat and how some of the weapons, especially grenades and melee, how these sort of things are going to play out. So let's have a look at what this is all about. Over the past few months, people have asked quite often whether or not there will be anti-vehicle weapons within Elite Dangerous Odyssey. It turns out that yes, there will be. Players will be able to walk around carrying these, and there will be such weapons as explosives and rocket launchers, as well as grenades, and these will be able to be used against ships, so players on foot will be able to target ships with these. Now, how much damage these can actually do to ships is something that we don't yet know. It's probably going to be a case of finding out how the balance for this goes during the alpha, and Frontier will no doubt adjust that accordingly over time. Now, in terms of the types of explosives that will be available, only grenades and rocket launchers are planned for launch. Frontier are also very clear to say that grenades will be able to do significant damage to a ship if the ship is unshielded. Now I'm going to assume that this ship, or this theoretical ship, would be parked down on the planetary surface and with its power disabled, or at least the shields off, and therefore the grenades will be able to do a significant amount of damage to it. Frontier say they're actually looking forward to watching in and seeing this happen. So yeah, hopefully this was referring to parked ships, because ships that are flying and fully shielded, I would imagine it would require superhuman powers to actually throw a grenade at one of these and successfully hit it, considering the speed and altitude that they can fly at. Now, in terms of weapons that you start out with, Frontier said that you will start out with a sidearm, basically the equivalent of players starting out with a sidewinder in the base game. So I'd assume that means something that's very basic, not too powerful, but enough to get you on your feet and get you started. Now, we know that weapons will be upgradable. Weapon attachments will also be upgradable, and these will all be upgraded via the engineers. Now, here's one thing that some of you may think is a bit of a cause for concern. Other people will probably like it, so it's quite likely that this is going to be a bit of a divisive situation. But to quote Frontier exactly on this, will players be able to upgrade their weapon with attachments? Frontier say you can choose from several attachments for your weapons, however a modified weapon cannot be reverted, so think carefully. You can own multiple copies of a weapon for different situations, but can only carry a limited number of them at a time, depending on your suit type. So the thing that I think some people might have some cause for concern here is the inability to revert weapons once modified. All the more so that it appears that these sort of upgrades will need to be done via engineering, so going through the whole engineering process multiple times looks as though it's going to be pretty much an essential requirement, at least depending on what type of weapon you want. So yeah, it's far too early to speculate exactly what this means at the moment. Frontier are doing a very good job of being perhaps a little bit too vague with the information here, but based on what we're reading here, I'm not a big fan of having to repeat the same actions over and over again. Now, when it comes to engineering a ship, you can engineer a module and then transfer that module into another ship if it fits. That's all well and good. But to engineer a weapon once and then be stuck with what you've got and have to engineer from scratch with another one just seems like a lot of busy work, and something I'm personally not a big fan of. So I'm really hoping that there's more to this and that Frontier have this one well planned out and well thought out. The same is true when it comes to the weapon attachments. Based on what we've seen in this Q&A here, it seems as though weapon attachments have to be done through the engineer. So if that's just something very simple like lights and scopes, why are those not purchasable from a shop? Surely the range of the light should be upgraded through an engineer, the range and power of the scope should be upgraded through the engineer, and the basic attachment itself should be purchasable. Again, far too early to speculate, we'll have to see, but if everything is coming from an engineer, then that is going to be a little bit on the odd side, to say the least. And again, it would suggest some busy work, wouldn't it? As for what type of weapons there are, well, there's a wide variety of them. These include pistols, rifles, SMGs, shotguns, and rocket launchers. Frontier have said they will be revealing more detail in the future. I think we pretty much already knew that particular piece of information anyway, but it is on this week's Q&A. Now, one weapon type that you may have noticed is missing from that list is melee weapons. Frontier have said that melee attacks are possible, but there won't be any specific melee weapons. So I can only assume this means hitting your opponent with your gun, either the butt of your gun or maybe hitting them with your fist. Not too unusual for these types of games. Something we've seen in screenshots is the aiming reticle. This will be always on screen, and the reason for that is because the aiming reticle is used for interacting with other areas of the game. So again, pretty much a standard affair, stuff you'd expect from an FPS game. And finally, from the list of Q&A answers here, players will be able to pick up any items that you drop, and this can include ammo and grenades. So some very specific answers in this week's Q&A. Now, personally, I'd like to see a little more in future. Hopefully it's not too much longer until we actually get to see more on Odyssey and hear more. Some of the answers here are pretty much standard affair, like I say, for what you'd expect from an FPS game. So whilst it's nice to see them confirmed, there's a degree of expectation that they would be featured anyway. But nonetheless, another Q&A here for Odyssey. Now, for those of you who missed my previous video, Frontier did say recently in a live stream that they are working to release some new content, some new video content on Odyssey in early March. It's a vague release window at the moment, but that's what they're aiming for. Things may change. It seemed there was going to be two things, one of them the next dev diary, the other some sort of PR content. I'm expecting this to be a trailer of some type, but that's just my personal speculation. And whilst we're on the subject of speculation, I don't want to speculate too much on the details in this week's Q&A, basically because without seeing it in action, it's very hard to really have a feel for how any of this is actually going to play out. But do let me know your thoughts and feelings in the comment section below on all of this. I'd love to hear from you. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys and girls next time.